Hello, welcome to our podcast, Digital Forensics Redefined. I'm your host, Calvin Weeks.
And I'm your co-host, Rob Walensky, and our podcast is brought to you by Defense Forensic, your digital investigative services company,
where we find the truth in data. Defense Forensic is a forensics, e-discovery, cybersecurity incident response, and cybersecurity consulting firm that provides services throughout the entire United States.
Currently, we have labs and personnel in Wisconsin, Illinois, and Oklahoma.
And the clients that we serve are primarily attorneys from all different practices and areas, criminal and civil. We also cover the solo and small to medium-sized businesses, government, including law enforcement, and, of course, individuals. So, Rob, tell me, why would attorneys want to call Defense Forensic?
Well, the most obvious situation I can think of is if there's digital evidence involved in a case that they're working, whether that be criminal or civil or whatever, family law, anything like that. If digital evidence is a part of that, then you know they may need an expert to help present that and do the right things to get that case progressed to court.
Whether that's involving either performing forensics work or e-discovery, or even if it's just being the expert consultant or expert witness to provide expert testimony work, right? Affidavits, declarations, different things like that, right?
Sure, and I think that's important. I mean, we can certainly provide some consultation and stuff in court filings, applications and things like that for work to be done. I think that's an important aspect of what we do.
Yeah, if an attorney thinks that, well, I got a case that there's no electronic evidence, that's not true. And they may choose not to use that evidence, which is fine, but nearly 100% of every single case involves some type of electronic data or digital information, anything like that.
Sure.
Even if it's work that's being presented by the opposing side, especially like in criminal, well, the prosecutors and the investigators, they've done their forensics and written their reports, and sometimes they get very, very technical, and sometimes an attorney just needs an explanation.
Yes, and I think that's probably something that is underutilized.
Yeah.
Have a second set of eyes. Review the work that somebody else did.
Yeah.
It may be that they're 100% spot on, and that the advice we give that's an accurate representation of the digital evidence or that item.
Yeah.
We may find other things too that someone else didn't, or may have be able to give a different perspective.
Yeah, I've had that as well in civil cases where an attorney is, there's an opposing expert, and I've heard the term coined, it's expert versus expert. Well, for what you and I do, I mean, it is a science, right? These are facts. It just is what it is. There could be some interpretation difference, but it's always good to have somebody peer review that. And if that's it, and there's a lot of times that I will end up refuting what another expert has done. When I say expert, I use that loosely because there may be very great technical people, but not necessarily investigators or forensics people and understand what it means to actually take a case and investigate it and get that into court.
Right. And you kind of alluded to it, but if an attorney has a case that they don't have digital evidence for, that would probably be a good time to give us a call.
Yeah.
Send us an email or do something, because there very well may be some digital evidence that just wasn't detected or was overlooked, or it actually might be in the possession of one of the parties and it just hasn't been considered that it could be relevant.
Yeah. So what kind of cases are we talking about that an attorney would, whatever type of case they have? So what are those cases that somebody should reach out to Defense Forensic for?
Yeah, I mean, my experience was death cases and narcotics cases.
Yeah.
I mean, specific to those two, digital evidence is invaluable, regardless of whether it's a wrongful death type case or a criminal death type case. and drug distribution. I mean, there's a multitude of uses that are used where cell phones or whatever is used.
Yeah, it could almost be any crime. There also can be civil with any crime that occurs. There can be civil litigation that comes out of any crime and activity, and if it involves electronic evidence, it's important to get that.
Well, and another part of that is that as you investigate these things, the applications and things that are on these digital devices, cell phones, computers, whatever, most crimes, there's a purpose, whether it be, oftentimes it's financial. In the drug dealing world, it's not about, having the prettiest drugs. It's about making the money.
Yeah.
And nowadays, very rare are we seeing cash exchanges with all the cash paying apps and things out there. The data in those in a drug case would be, invaluable. It'd be, to be able to actually get your hands on that, instead of knowing they're doing it, and you can't readily read it and doing nothing. It's there.
Yeah.
It's there, and it's just somebody's got to get it.
Yeah. We also cover cases like fraud, embezzlement, robbery, burglary, vehicle theft. But outside the criminal side, on the civil side, you're dealing with intellectual property issues, dealing with family law, divorce cases kind of stuff. Any kind of business dispute that would be occurring, cybersecurity related issues. A lot of times insurance companies need the evidence that something happened and how it occurred, but that business has got to get back up and going. So attorneys are heavily involved with those type of activities, and
sure.
we take care of those.
Right. The crash reconstruction or investigation areas, whether it be law enforcement, insurance companies, financial institutions that may have an interest in the vehicles or whatever. The vehicles can tell a story potentially. I mean, the data may be there, and that may, oftentimes that's not something that somebody can alter. Yeah. So, that may give you some insight into truthfulness and what happened, factual information. So.
Well, another thing, especially with employers, you have workplace injuries and things like that. Insurance companies get involved with that, and a lot of times our services are needed for those type of cases to help prove or disprove that something did or did not occur.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, so how about the solo or small to medium-sized businesses? Why would they want to call defense forensic?
Sure. I mean, the first thing that comes to mind for me is an internal situation, whether it be, a theft, the intellectual property type stuff, whether intentional or not, policy violations, things like that.
Harassment.
It could be harassment, and whether that's internal or for some external source. Maybe someone's intimidating an employee trying to get information on the company or something.
Unauthorized use, unauthorized access, theft, or some type of data obfuscation, right? Stealing. I'm from Oklahoma. Give me a break.
Yeah. We'll cut you a break on that
one. Okay, so especially the other thing for companies would be if they've been hacked or involving some kind of ransomware attack or phishing attack or something like that, and they need that for insurance purposes, or their business is down and they need to get back up and operating fast.
Sure.
They need to reach out as fast as possible. So tell me now, why would government agencies want to use defense forensic, and especially when it comes to law enforcement?
Sure. Well, I think the most obvious thing is it relates to law enforcement in my experience, and you probably share this as well, is police tend to wear many hats. More recent history, we've become experts in everything, and that's not even illogical. They're doing too much.
Yeah.
So keeping the cops on the street and doing law enforcement functions, I think, has now kind of been I think the trend is going back to that.
Yeah.
For many years we had to be we were the psychologists and the marriage counselors and all this stuff, and I think time has shown that maybe we weren't the best at everything. We could respond and triage things, but there were experts in areas, in many areas, not just what we're talking about, but that could handle specific things better because that's their area of expertise.
Yeah.
I mean, the law enforcement community, they do DNA work. They're and these investigators are very skilled at collecting DNA and preserving DNA and evidence and chain of custody with physical evidence. They may not be, and my experience tells me that typically we aren't the experts in digital evidence. We may have law enforcement officers that are functional or can run some software or whatever, but then when it comes to testifying it or running into someone like yourself in a courtroom in an adversarial situation, they're out of their comfort zone, and just that isn't the zone that they are in because they're cops.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it also comes down to, there's continuing training that has to be ongoing every single year, and it's a pretty significant amount. That costs a lot of money. The technology changes all the time, and the cost outlay for the technology that's required to be renewed and updated every single year, it's overwhelming, and it's too much probably for law enforcement, where, even as a private company, we do that. We spend that money to have the latest tools, the latest techniques, the latest software, the latest, everything. We go to training on a regular basis, and we are much faster. We're able to operate much faster than the law enforcement agencies. We just can't do it for free.
Right.
But it doesn't have to be expensive.
Yeah, there's an inherent expense involved in anything, you know. So, but for someone to budget, and government budgeting is obviously much more unique than budgeting, balancing my checkbook. So these guys, for them to try to figure out licensing and hardware and software and how much time they're going to be spending, and 1 year they might have 15 cell phones they're going to do, and the next year they might have 3 homicides, and now they got 300 cell phones and computers and vehicles and all this stuff to do. So budgeting for it is virtually impossible. It's probably more like guessing than budgeting.
Yeah. Well, even with the state crime labs, you see those whenever the volume goes up, they just start stacking. It's not that they get them done any faster; they just keep getting further and further behind. And I know that at least Defense Forensic can offer a solution for that to be much more timely in getting those cases processed and handling the evidence and making it happen quicker.
Sure. Yeah, I think at least in Wisconsin, there's a handful of crime labs scattered around the state, and there's different regions and whatever, but they're handling evidence, and not just digital evidence. They have many components, from dozens to maybe even 100 agencies within their region, and you got to work the case, a case at a time, and it's time consuming. And
well, the main thing with governments and law enforcement, they just don't necessarily just call and we just do the work. There's contract negotiations, there's proposals, there's things that have to be done, which we have the experience, we have contracts in place already. So we may have an existing contract that we can do some work off of, and there may be, there is absolutely experience to get these contracts in place to make sure that they can do it quickly, they can do it efficiently, and the prices are negotiated, something that all the parties, all the people that are involved, all the agencies that are involved.
Right. Yeah, I mean, one thing, just to kind of finalize that thought with law enforcement is that, when you can get the results and your information back quicker, you can, these investigators who are really skilled can utilize that in their investigation versus doing their investigation and wondering and hoping what that digital data is going to be because it's not getting done for several months, or it might get moved up because there's a jury trial scheduled and you get it the week before the jury trial, and you may have stuff that may be contrary to what you knew before. And if had you known it earlier, things would have worked out much more efficiently.
New leads that you got to chase down, and all kinds of issues like that. Okay, so what about solo individuals, right, or individuals that might need to call defense forensics? Why would they call us,
Sure.
individuals?
Well, it could be something, maybe they're contemplating divorce or whatever, where they haven't consulted with an attorney or whatever, and they may have some messages from a spouse or somebody harassing them. They want you to look at it. They might not even know who that person is because it's being done, over social media or something.
That becomes vital when there's a child custody at issue, or when there's high value assets, real property that has high value, that you need to get the evidence preserved as fast as possible.
Right.
So,
right. And in a more simple form, somebody might have passed away in the family or whatever, and they have a cell phone with a lock code on it, or even not a lock code. There's a bunch of photos on this phone. They're looking at them and they want to preserve them just because it's a family member and it has pictures of whatever, and they want it in some type of media where they can store it on their computer in their cloud or whatever, just to preserve memories or something. So
well, and they could have also bought a new phone, and maybe not all the files, pictures, images, music, videos, whatever, have been transferred, and they need to get them off of the old phone before they destroy that or throw that away. And a lot of times, even though the screen may be cracked and you can't really see some of the words on there, sometimes we can get the data off of there anyway.
Yeah, and that's a good point. And that kind of goes back to law enforcement. As I got later in my career working narcotics cases, many times, rather than throw the dope out the car, when the cops showed up, they'd be snapping their cell phones in half, to hiding what's on those to show, the ounce of dope in the car was not nearly as bad as the 500 that they've delivered and got text messages for on their phone. So they literally would start snapping these phones. And many times, even when they did that, we could do some modifications or repairs, or have somebody who's skilled in phone repair repair it to the point where we could still extract the data. And so
it doesn't have to be a functional phone again, but it needs to be functional enough where you can extract all the data off.
Correct.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, with that, if you have any case or any need involving any kind of electronic or digital evidence, or you just think you might, you need to pick up the phone. You need to call Defense Forensic. They will be your partner in helping you with what you need. Thanks for joining our podcast this week, brought to you by Defense Forensic, where we find the truth in data.
And before you go, please make sure to click that subscribe button and post any comments you may have about this week's episode below. Also, check out our website at defenseforensic.com for more information on the services available for individuals and organizations that require expert analysis of digital evidence.
And once again, thanks for watching, and join us next week for a new episode. And remember, the truth is out there.